You are here for a Google Maps platform webinar on data-driven styling, new features from Google Maps platform. And this webinar is presented by Sanborn and AppGeo. I am Aaron Doucette, a sales engineer here with AppGeo, and also on the call with me, who you'll be hearing from in just a couple minutes, is David Holmes, a customer engineer. For those of you who are familiar with AppGeo, we are now a wholly owned subsidiary of Sanborn, and we're now leveraging all the capabilities of this larger combined company. So this new combination of talents and technology brings more data collection capabilities coupled with our AppGeo technical consulting services. Sanborn is also a Google partner, so together we bring lots of combined experience to the table, including expertise on cloud and the emerging Google Earth Engine platform. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to David Holmes, who is going to read through our agenda and get things kicked off for us. So Dave.
Thank you, Aaron. Good afternoon, everybody. Good day, everybody, depending on where you are. So our agenda for today is Aaron has gone through some introductions on who we are and what this webinar is all about. I'm going to provide a quick overview of this new capability called data-driven styling. And Aaron's going to come in and provide some examples and tips. He's got a live demonstration of some examples of thematics generated from data-driven styling. And then I'll end it up with going over a few points on how to get started with data-driven styling. So let's begin with what is this data-driven styling, this new capability from Google Maps. So this is a new capability. They've been working on this for at least a year that we've been aware of it as a Google partner. It came out, I'd say, a couple of months ago, and it is now fully available. And we have a number of our clients who are starting to play around with it. What is it? This is a new capability to generate thematics, to take Google Maps platform and enable it to be used for geospatial analytics, really for the first time. Google Maps platform has been available for a lot of different use cases, but using it to create thematics around data that's relevant to your business is something new that we're very excited about. Google is bringing all of their administrative boundaries to the table, polygons representing states and counties and zip codes, even down to neighborhoods in some cities. And this capability enables you to bring your data and combine your tabular data. That could be customer business data. That could be store business performance data. It can be public data such as demographics, socioeconomic data. Put all that together into interesting thematics against zip code, neighborhood, county, and create these thematic visualizations to provide excellent tools for driving business decisions. That's what this capability is all about. So what are these polygons? You may not be aware. Most people are not. I have to admit, I wasn't aware of the extensive nature of what Google has in the Google Maps database relative to administrative boundaries. If you bring up your consumer Google Maps, the app on your phone or on your computer, and type in a zip code or the name of your city, you will see one of these polygons. They're all in there, and they're exposed in the regular consumer Google Maps app when asked for. And what Google has done is they have now brought all that data and enabled it to be used in the Google Maps platform through the APIs to generate thematics. So this is huge. This is a really milestone point for Google to open up their data for geospatial analytics. And the polygons are pretty extensive. It varies around the world, and we understand that it's going to grow over time and even more so in different areas of the world. But right now in North America, there are 7 different administrative boundaries that are available for generating thematics from state, country, then state, county, zip code, locality or metro boundary, town boundary, and then even for some specific towns and cities down to neighborhoods. So there's a lot to work here with, and opens up a lot of different opportunities for generating thematics for different analytical use cases. They've got a website out there that you can easily get to and see the boundaries visually, and there's a table that shows the list of them, the different boundaries by country. It's pretty easy to get to. If you Google boundaries coverage, what I'm showing on this link here, you will immediately get to it. In fact, I think Aaron's going to show that in his segment in just a few minutes. But it's a real easy tool to explore the world of administrative boundaries that is now available in the Google Maps platform. So when you combine your data, your business data, your data from public sources such as Census Bureau, with the Google administrative boundaries, it opens up this world of geospatial analytics. So the gist of it is you're taking your tabular data, you're combining it with a particular kind of boundary data, state, county, zip code, neighborhood, and then you're generating thematics. For those of you who've been in the GIS world, choropleth maps, but more commonly referred to as thematic maps, on any attribute related to your data, and generate those analytics in the Google Maps environment, and thus enabling that type of geospatial analysis to a much larger group of people. This can be relevant to your marketing groups, to your business groups trying to decide on what direction to go to, your sales groups, all different types of users that may have never worked with mapping technology and data they've obviously worked with your own business data, but perhaps never in a mapping context. And it clearly opens the eyes to what's going on, as you'll see in a few examples. Consider some of the possibilities with this. Simple things like population by zip code. Where is everybody located? Demographics by zip code. Tap into all that data in the census. It's organized by zip. Look at socioeconomic data by county, by zip. Look at residential density, even down to neighborhood. This stuff is very, very powerful. And then we're going to take this one step further, because not only can you connect data that's tied to zip codes, other administrative boundaries, but you can bring in data about your business, your store locations, your customer locations. You have an address on every customer, which means it can be used to participate in generating a thematic. For example, showing customer demographics. What is the makeup, socioeconomic, average household income of the zip codes where your customers are located, or your stores are located, or the zip codes surrounding your stores? This opens up all kinds of possibilities. If you're in the insurance business, what does it look like to profile on a map where your claims are coming from and the magnitude of those claims, perhaps by metro area or by zip code? If you're in the real estate space, if you're in the retail space or insurance, very interesting to look at property prices as they're changing over time by zip code. The use cases are endless here, and now it can all be done in that very familiar Google Maps environment and take advantage of the Google reliability and scalability. So here's a couple of examples just to sort of tweak your imagination. Here's visualizing property prices across regions. Say zip codes, maybe within a city, San Francisco, by neighborhoods. You could, obviously you have to have access to that information, which is available either from commercial sources, perhaps if you're in real estate, you have it in your own sources, or even public sources on recent sales. All that data is public information. You can bring it in, generate thematics by these administrative boundaries like neighborhoods, and start to understand in this very easy to use Google Maps environment the trends of property growth, rises and falls and so forth over time. Here's a simple example around store performance. You could start looking at the metrics around your store performance, sales, inventory, capacity, fill in the blank, everything that happens in the retail world, and look at that on at a administrative boundary like zip code, or maybe the surrounding zip codes around where your stores are located. Starts to open all kinds of analytical ideas. And a lot of this stuff, we are very confident and we are very aware that people have been doing this. But typically, I suspect in your organization, you've got one group, maybe the market analyst group or research group that does this. And they're probably using some very complicated tools. I don't want to take anything away from that. That's what's new here. Google is opening the door to do those types of analytics and present them to a much broader audience using the Google Maps platform. That's what's so compelling about this new capability. Here's some examples that are from some demonstrations that we've put together. Aaron's going to be showing you these in just a few minutes, but just to sort of paint some more possibilities. Here's a thematic showing the state of Massachusetts by zip code showing population. Very simple. Very easy to put together. Data came out of the census. You get to control the thresholds of that color ramp in the legend. And Aaron will talk a little bit about the way to do that. That's all controlled by your application. Then you can make it a little bit more sophisticated. So for example, let's look at population density. So population divided by the size of the zip code, square miles. So now we've got residential density by zip. So again, for a whole state, that's interesting. We did the same webinar a week ago for our government audience, government clients and audience. And stopping right there is very relevant to government agencies to understand population and demographics and those kinds of things. But in the business world, in your world, you can take that one step further and lay on top of that map, for example, store locations. That's what those pinpoints could represent. Or those could be your customer locations, whatever is relevant to your business decision-making. And now all of a sudden we've got this thematic showing population density by zip code connecting with your data, your point data, store locations, customer locations, whatever it is. The thematic here was generated to represent the entire state. It could just as easily be generated to only represent the zip codes where your stores are located. And therefore that color band will be even more relevant to your business. That's the power that is being offered with this API in the Google Maps platform. Taking one more step, again, in the state of Massachusetts, this is average income per capita. So we went and tapped into some census data by zip code and looked at average income, divided that by population, and came up with household income per capita per zip code. And then we overlaid on top of that store locations. Again, this particular thematic was generated for every zip in the state of Massachusetts. It could just as easily be just the zip codes where you have stores. So I hope that that communicates illustrates the power, endless possibilities of how to use this capability to bring the world of geospatial analytics into Google Maps and therefore available to so many more people. One more last example. My colleague Aaron went out and found some public data from Redfin. You've probably heard of Redfin in the real estate business, and he put one of these together. He's going to show this in a demo in a few minutes. This is average sales price of property sales for the Los Angeles area. Again, simple thematic, but now being shown in Google Maps. So this is a case where it's business data, third-party commercially available business data. If you're in real estate, obviously this is relevant. If you're in insurance and you want to understand where things are and the property values and how it's changing over time, if you're in banking or retail, this becomes relevant. And by doing this in the Google Maps platform, it opens up a whole new audience to take advantage of this. And these can be put together so easily. So it's not a heavy lift to generate these. And more importantly, create applications that are tapping into data that is being kept up to date. So every time somebody looks at this, it's giving you the current picture of the data out there. So I hope that these few examples can open up your thoughts and your tease some ideas about the possibilities of data-driven styling, this new feature from Google. Google has done in my opinion, taken two major steps with this new capability. Number one, they are introducing the concept of bring your own data. To be honest, it's one of the first times, there's a few other cases, but this is the major event for Google to allow you to bring your own data, combine it with Google data, and take advantage of the Google capabilities, in this case, generating thematics. Number two, it opens the door to geospatial analytics. This is huge. Google Maps has never really been targeted or really, I mean, you could do a few things, but nothing to the extent that is now available. And it opens the door to, as I say, opening up geospatial analytics, simple thematics for driving business decisions, driving marketing decisions, looking at performance of business, all these types of business goals. Do that in an environment that is easy to use and has the familiarity of Google Maps and the reliability and scalability of Google. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Aaron. He's going to dive in deeper and show you a few demos and tips. Aaron?
Thanks, Dave. That was a great introduction to what the platform offers in this feature. And in this section, what I'd like to do is show you a little bit on how to get started, what to be looking for if you are an existing customer, and if you are brand new to the platform, this will also be very critical, as there's a handful of things you'll want to enable when you're setting this up for the first time. After that, I'm going to dive into some live versions of those maps that we were just looking at, so you can get a better sense of the functionality and performance that this feature will enable you to work with. So first things first, like many of the new features that have been released on Google Maps platform in the last couple years, this all is set up within the Google Cloud Console. So if you're an existing Google Maps platform customer, you'll have a console much like this, and that little paint palette icon there, that's your map styling pane. We previously did a webinar on how to customize your Google Maps, and this is one additional feature that lives in that area. You'll see here in the yellow box, data-driven styling is marked as a preview. That is where you're going to enable this feature for a particular map style. And again, you're going to want to enable this for any given style of map that you've customized and want to further use data-driven styling on. Clicking into that menu is going to give you a list that looks just like this. This is where you can enable the geographic boundaries you want to bring in. Now, there's no harm in turning them on, but you have to have them enabled if you're expecting your data to match up and work on the map. So in the example I have put together here, I've turned on postal code, administrative area 1. I believe administrative area 1 is counties, sorry. So for the US, if you're trying to sort by county, you're going to want that admin area 1, localities, towns, and then postal code, zip code. So yeah, make sure those are on, hit OK and save, and then that style is going to be ready for data-driven styling. Now, there is also the question of how do I bring my data into the map? That this custom data sets that Dave was referring to, whether it be population or statistics on your business. Well, all of that can come directly from a spreadsheet or a database that has columns. I suspect that's how many of you report out your data, so it's going to be really easy to bring it in. And the great news here is that, as Dave mentioned, that live link possibility, you could set this up once, and then as those numbers change on your backend, that's going to be reflected on the map, and we can look at that in a little detail furthermore. But when Dave was referring to the various color ramps and the changes between classifications, those are called data bins, and this is a feature that they've given you control over where you want to set them. Really just a threshold for the map to know to go from one color to the next. So, data binning is a way of grouping your data into different classifications. There's a few different ways to do it, and that approach is going to depend on the type of data you're working with and its characteristics. But as you can see in this example here, I've made somewhat even groupings by the total count. That's one strategy where 1, 2, 3, 4, those would represent 4 different colors on a map. And we can look at that in more detail as we go. So we're going to share a couple tips from the data science and GIS science perspective that are going to help you think about setting up these maps if you're interested in doing this on your own, or interested in learning more about creating these color variation maps. And our first tip is choosing an appropriate geographic unit. So as we mentioned, you have access to not only zip codes, but towns and counties and even states and countries if you wanted to create something that covered the whole world. But when you're trying to create a map, you really want to choose the appropriate level of detail for the problem that you're trying to solve or the information that you're trying to convey. So for a question that the data is summarized at the county level, using county-sized units might be the appropriate choice there. But on the right-hand side, you can see we get a much more fine, detailed view of the data if we are to use zip code and understand that, okay, out of those 100.88 people per square mile, they're really concentrated in this southwestern portion. So if you were trying to understand, say, where to place a new store or where to market to customers using geography, using that finer resolution, as you can see on the right, is going to give you a much better perspective. So moving on, our next tip is to apply normalization to your data where appropriate. Now, this is what is implied when we have these area-weighted or population-weighted maps where, for example, we want to show the average number of hours spent commuting per week or the average sale price for homes within a certain zip code. If you are simply to sum up your data and say, I'm going to show the total of my population data per zip code, it's easy to miss some of those finer trends that come out when you're either averaging it by area or averaging it by population. The reason for that can be if we just have a larger, not all zip codes are equally the size area, not all towns are the equal in area size. So a town that is larger geographically may actually have lower people per square mile, but because it's so large, have a larger total population. So these are all things you want to keep in mind. There's a number of ways to perform this type of normalization. When you're creating maps in this manner, very important to consider normalization as a process as you're preparing your data for display. Now, our last tip before we dive into the demos is about those data bins I talked about before. Choosing a binning method is really important because you can have the same data set, and as you can see here, it's represented using 9 different methods, exact same data, 9 different display methods, and you get very different maps. So depending on what you're trying to focus in on or what type of message you want to send, choosing the right binning method is very important. Now, this is getting a bit more into the statistics and data science, but you might want to think for the problem, are you trying to highlight an outlier? Are you trying to show the deviation from an average? Are you trying to have a consistent color band from the lowest possible value to the highest possible value? Or are you going to maybe account for the outliers? These are all questions that you're going to want to be thinking about when you're working with raw data. And this is something that we can help you with. At AppGeo, we love spatial data. It's what we live and breathe. So if you have questions on this stuff, we'd love to be in touch. Now, from here, I want to give you a live look at 3 different maps that I was able to put together using this new feature set. Some of these you saw in those screenshots, but I think it's a lot more fun to actually launch into them. I'm going to start by giving you a quick look at this region coverage viewer. This isn't something that we made, but as Dave mentioned, the link was available, and we can send this link out. And what that allows you to do is preview the different boundaries that are available for styling. You'll see each one has a unique place ID that actually becomes relevant in more advanced implementations of this. But I can switch, from town to county, see that, or go down to, say, the postal code. And then now we're looking at that finer level of detail. Yeah, so you can play around and understand what is available. As Dave mentioned, neighborhood is another one that it doesn't have complete coverage because not everywhere uses that neighborhood classification, but especially for more urban areas, such as the city of Worcester here in Massachusetts, there are many different neighborhood areas. We think that neighborhood feature is especially relevant for real estate applications where people might refer to the neighborhood rather than, say, the zip code that they're in. So moving on from there, I want to jump right into these demos. This demo is that first map where we're looking at just the total population count for a given zip code. So very easy. We had a table of zip codes. We had the population for each. We feed that into the map. We define the breaks by the legend I've created here. And what it will generate automatically for you is the map of the state with all these zip codes colored in. I've gone and placed some sample locations that could represent stores on top of that. And from a business planning perspective, this allows you to understand, hey, Are my stores located where customers are? Do I have any missing stores where customers might be? And total population is a good way to understand that, but going one step further, we can look at population density, the number of people per square mile. Now, I've taken this map and bumped it out to include a handful of more neighboring states' data. And as you can see, even with what adds up to thousands of zip codes, we still have really great performance. It's not lagging at all. And I've even added quite a few more stores. So on this map, the urban areas, areas with over 2,000 people per square mile, pretty dense population there, they really jump out at you. And we can understand, is this a retailer that focuses in urban areas or maybe suburban areas where they have a little more space for things like parking lots? And, doing a quick analysis of this one, it seems that, the majority of their stores are in this, darker green category, but not the purple. So that kind of tells you something about the way they have their business. They're a big box platform. Going one step further, this is something that I think a lot of you would want to take advantage of. I've set this map up so if I click on the store, I get the store number and an estimation of annual revenue that we fed in from, this is example data, but you could feed in your annual revenue and your employee count. And what this allows us to do is take two stores and compare them side by side, understand maybe why one has lower revenue. Maybe they're having a hard time getting employees. Again, these are all fictional numbers and just for the demonstration, but using your real data, you're going to very quickly see some of these trends come to the surface. So very powerful. You can design those pop-ups to have whatever you want, even a link, say, directly to that location, and allow you to do some of that business analytics here in the web. And the greatest thing about all this, again, is none of this requires any GIS on the back end. We're simply feeding it data in tabular form. And for example, all of your store locations, those numbers, which very well might update quarterly, and all of this population data, which is in this case freely available. Going into our last demo, this one was interesting. This is that data from Redfin, online real estate service, and they publish a whole bunch of information on recent sales and lots of data on the real estate market that anyone can go and get to. But in this case, we're looking at recent sales of single family homes. What was the average sale price? And this allows you to really quickly do like a real estate market analysis of different areas. One thing that I probably should have mentioned earlier is that the underlying map is something that you can customize. We have a whole series of videos on how to do that in more detail. But in this case, we're using the default Google map. And one of the value that brings to the table is that we can zoom in and have all of those points of interest populate in addition to the data we're showing, which gives you additional context about, that region. As you can see here, there are some that are showing up as blank, and that's not an error. That's actually because those were zip codes that Redfin didn't have a sale for, so it's not going to fill them in with the color. So you can have, custom boundaries. It doesn't have to have complete coverage to work. You're just feeding in a list of, in this case, zip codes and those average prices, which we had in a table, and it's creating a beautiful map like this. Again, this one, quite a number of zip codes featured, and we can go all the way in, all the way down to the building level if we want, even drop in on Street View and look around at that property. So really powerful stuff. And, the Google Maps platform offers a whole lot of features. This is just one of the latest ones that we're covering today, but we think it's a very valuable one in that it opens up the doors, Dave mentioned, to far more GIS data analysis features and a lot more with the custom data that used to involve quite a few more steps to create something like this. So I'll be happy to answer any questions or go back into any of these demos during the Q&A. But from here, I want to hand it back to Dave to give you just a little bit of background on how we can help you if anything you saw today looks interesting or you have a project that you'd like to get off the ground.
So let's talk for just a few minutes to tie off the webinar here on how we can help you get started. Usually with our clients, there's two ways of doing this. You either build it yourself or you outsource it to a company like us. It's typically the way this is approached. And if you want to take on a Google Maps platform implementation on your own, we have many clients who have done this. The documentation is extensive, so it's not an overwhelming thing to do, but there are lots and lots of tips and tricks on how to do it in the best way. and that's where we can help you. We provide a consulting program that we call Spatial IQ that addresses all types of topics around implementing with Google Maps. Best practices, how to optimize the usage so you don't waste money, how to build simple and effective user experiences. With this new capability, we can help you set up the data-driven styling. As Aaron mentioned, we have lots of experience and years of geospatial analytics on how to bin your data and answer the right questions and create those thematics that make sense for your purposes. We're very good at helping you navigate the Google Terms of Services, and we're very good at advising, consulting on how to deploy in the cloud. If you'd like to consider outsourcing, we also, next slide, please, we also provide that as our professional services. We have years of application development experience. This little illustration is a recent project that we did for a client. We focus on simple, purpose-driven user experiences, high performance, obviously taking full advantage of Google Maps in an optimal way. We work closely with you to build exactly what you and your audience needs to see. We also provide full up strategic planning. If you are I've got a lot of ideas around location and I need help organizing and figuring out what data I need and where do I get that and how do I get started, we often are doing strategic planning professional services. We'd love the opportunity to talk to you about that. If you are in a situation where you have lots of data sources and you're not sure how to put it together and make some sense out of it, that's another area that we have quite a bit of experience with. So just a little bit of our professional services to help you get started. And with that, Aaron, I think we're ready for some Q&A.
Absolutely. So just as a reminder, that Q&A is open. I see one or two questions that have come in already, but we want to make sure this is an opportunity for you to participate and get anything that you're curious about answered. I would also like to remind all of you that we do have a YouTube channel online called The Mapping Channel. We'd encourage you all to subscribe, as that's where these webinars will be posted. We have many other Google Maps platform videos on there, some really great content that's going to help you make the most of the platform. And we encourage you to follow along to make sure you have all the latest information that we're putting out there. So if you can subscribe, we'd very much appreciate that. And with that, I think we can go right into the Q&A, Dave.
Okay.
Let's see. So we do have a couple questions that just came in. So one is, can these visualized maps be added to a mobile app? That's a good question. I'll take an attempt at answering that for you. So the visualization features right now, I believe, are supported on the Google Maps JavaScript API. Now, they do have specific versions of the API for Android and iOS. I believe these data-driven styling features haven't been publicly released on those additional platforms yet. However, that the mobile version of a website can still display the JavaScript map. I even, as your question came in, brought it up on my phone here. Let's see if that shows. Whoop. And it is working. So as long as you're using that JavaScript API, you should be in good shape. And I would expect the iOS and Android specific versions of this to be released down the road. Does that resonate well with you, Dave?
It does. We have been doing development in the web browser framework for years, and not only for desktop and laptop form factors, but also for tablet and phone form factors. It's fairly straightforward, and it's actually a little bit more, quite a bit more efficient. You write it once and it adapts to the form factor. And all of these data-driven styling could be used with that approach. So love to talk to you further about what you have in mind.
Sure thing. Thank you for that question. We do have a couple more that have come in. Is there a cost associated with this new feature? Dave, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So that's really good news. There's no cost. This thing is a capability that's built on top of the Dynamic Maps JavaScript API. No additional cost, so it's all just available. You are obviously paying for the use of the Maps API, but that's it. There is one advanced feature that's in experimental mode. We don't want to get into the details here, but it's to be used if you have a point location and you want to do a lookup on the corresponding administrative boundary. For example, I've got a client or a customer location. I want to find out the zip code it's in and then generate the thematics around that zip code. They call it the region lookup. That's in experimental mode. It is likely going to carry a separate cost, which has not been published yet. But the basic, everything you saw in today's webinar, the demonstrations, all that is at no additional cost beyond the Maps API.
Absolutely. And if you aren't currently a customer, there is a $200 per month free credit available to get started. So if something you saw today, you want to experiment with, you could create an account and have up to $200 of Maps credit every month to experiment with and build out your app before scaling it, which is really helpful for getting your feet wet with these features. We have a couple more questions I want to get to here. Can I feed the map with a CSV file? So just to elaborate on that a little further, CSV, they're talking about like comma separated value, like a spreadsheet. And I'll answer that one as I built the demos using very similar data. So the answer is yes. The application on the screen that you're seeing is actually just reading in those values as basically a pair of, either zip code or, area ID and then value. So it's actually really straightforward to bring in that information from a spreadsheet. That's how I create all the demos. And what's cool about that is that, say that data was stored externally somewhere that updates in even real time. Every time that map is refreshed, it's going to grab the latest information, meaning that you can, code this once and then pretty much forget about it in the sense of having to make updates because it's going to happen in real time. Pretty much every other GIS application, when your data changes, you're uploading new files and editing your data from a GIS database. It can get complicated.
Yeah,
this
I
makes
could
it real
speak
easy.
to an example of that might be relevant to some of our audience. If you had store information or if you had customer information in your database, and that was being populated from your backend systems, if you have one of these applications that's reading that table every time it is run, it is reading that table, so it's always up to date. And as your business information is changing daily, hourly, every time this is run or the map is refreshed, you're going to see that new thematic that is reflecting the latest data. So it's a very powerful scenario and a live update use case.
Absolutely. So we do have another question that just came in. I love this one. How much does having a lot of these polygons on the map affect performance? Does the map lag a lot or no? So that's something I was curious about too, because the demos that Google has published on their site have 50 states, and it doesn't necessarily give you a great sense of how this scales. So I experimented, I started with just one state's worth of zip codes. There's a maybe 300 or 400 here. And then I wanted to see if it could work with more. So like this demo here with the residents, I loaded in the entire East Coast. And as you can see, there's a lot of information there, but it works pretty quickly. Now, one technical detail is that these features, along with some of the new 3D stuff that Google has added that we talked about in a previous webinar, are using some of the hardware acceleration in the web browser on your own browser. So the speed of the computer or device you're using will have some impact, but I tried it on my phone, I tried it on my computer, and we have, in this case, several thousand individual zip codes and going all the way out, all the way in, really great performance. And even if I refresh the page, in this case, you can see them loading from scratch. It's really just a couple seconds for, again, thousands of points. I will say that this is probably getting a bit in the technical weeds. Depending on the type of data you have, there are some ways to, let's say, simplify your data, maybe using things like rounding. Like if we're showing the price of homes, we might be able to round that to the nearest $1,000 or $10,000 rather than having the pennies and dollars and cents in there, right? And just having less decimal points is going to clean that up a little bit. But from back to your question, the performance, we haven't seen a lot of lag, and we've thrown a lot at it, so we're very confident in that performance capability. One question here from Ron: your store location point features on your demos are not associated with data-driven styles. So that is correct, and the reason we brought these points is to show you how you can use this feature in combination with other data sets. If we wanted to, we could style these points by one of these underlying values, like style these pins by revenue. But the idea here for this demo is to show that combination of data where we have the underlying demographics and then we're bringing in points on top, if that helps.
Well, let me address that as well. It's a great observation, Ron. Aaron, if you could zoom in just around Worcester there for just a moment, just a little bit. What you could do is you could take this point data, and maybe you've got annual revenue, what he showed in the pop-up, and that data could be used to generate the thematic for the corresponding polygons. So in this case, it's simply a layer of stores against a population, what is this, resident density. That's just one thematic. It could just as easily be a thematic by zip code of the annual revenue, and it would only be the zip codes where a store is located. So you can definitely connect the point data to generate connect that to the administrative boundaries, zip codes, neighborhoods, and generate thematics. That's a great observation. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yep, good point. And again, we're covering a lot today in a short amount of time. It's a pretty lengthy feature. And of course, as Dave mentioned, there's a lot you can do with this. So if you have further questions about anything that we looked at today, we'd love to have, a one-on-one conversation where we can show you things in a little bit more detail. We do have one more question that's come in before I think we wrap up for today. That is, how can I customize the map shown underneath? And that is a great question. I mentioned a little bit earlier that this is all wrapped into that custom styling that's available in Google Cloud. In that same section of the Google Cloud console, you're going to have the ability to change things like the colors that are shown on the base map. And you'll see in my examples, I used a lot of black and white base maps because it really lets that color of our polygons shine through. We can also simplify and turn on and off those points, even turn on and off different type of roads. So with that custom styling, you have pretty much unlimited capacity to play around with some of those different options. And you can even create multiple versions of the same map with different backgrounds if you needed to, all within the same interface. Anything to add on to that one, Dave?
No, that you can make it look exactly like the Google Maps that you have on your phone, or you can make it something else. It is incredibly flexible.
Exactly, and the reason we do recommend our customers do some of that styling is, let's say I have a color ramp where we're going from light green to dark green, and then we have a bunch of parks underneath that are by default going to be dark green. That can get confusing for your users when suddenly they're associating the color of like lakes and parks and things like that with the data you're trying to display. So using a scaled back base map is going to make that a lot simpler and let your data really shine. All right, that looks like we've gotten through all the questions. I really appreciate the participation here today from all of you. We look forward to sending you a copy of the recording as well as some of the links that we talked about. And we'll be putting together some more of these webinars in the near future on even more releases from Google. So thanks again for being here. And thank you, Dave, for co-presenting with me today.
You're welcome. Everybody have a great day.
All right, take care all.